The knocking started at 2:47 a.m. Elena Monroe knew it was him before she even opened her eyes. 3 sharp raps. Pause. 2 more. The same pattern Dominic always used when he wanted her to know he was in control. She lay frozen in her bed, sheets tangled around her legs, heart hammering against her ribs like something wild trying to escape. The knocking came again. Louder this time. More insistent. Elena. Baby. I know you're in there. His voice slithered under the door, soft and pleading and wrong in ways that made her skin crawl. She'd heard that voice before, right before his hands became fists. I just want to talk. Please. I've changed. The same words. Always the same words. Elena pressed her palm against her mouth to keep the sound in. She'd learned that silence was survival. That stillness could save you when running only made things worse. The knocking stopped. She waited. 1 minute. 2. 5. Then came the sound that drained all the blood from her face, the soft scrape of metal against metal. He still had a key. Of course he did. She'd changed the locks twice, but Dominic had always been good at getting what he wanted. The door opened. Elena bolted upright, but there was nowhere to go. Her studio apartment in Hongdae was barely 300 square feet. 1 room, 1 window, 1 exit, and he was standing in it. There you are, Dominic said, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that sounded like a jail cell locking. He looked the same, tall, handsome in that sharp-featured way that had fooled her once. Dark hair slicked back. Designer jacket. The kind of man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms, not breaking into ex-girlfriends' apartments at 3 in the morning. Get out, Elena whispered, but her voice came out thin and shaking. Baby, don't be like that. He moved toward her, hands raised like he was approaching a frightened animal. I came all the way to Seoul to find you. To apologize. Don't you know how much I love you? Love. The word tasted like blood in her mouth. You need to leave. Now. Or I'm calling. Who? Dominic's smile sharpened. The police? Go ahead. Tell them your boyfriend came to see you. Tell them you're being dramatic again. He was right. She knew he was right. She tried calling the police in New York. They'd looked at her bruises, the ones she could show them, and asked what she'd done to make him so angry. Dominic sat on the edge of her bed, too close, invading the only safe space she had left. I've been in therapy, Elena. Real therapy. I'm working on myself. My anger issues. Everything. She wanted to believe him. God, some broken part of her still wanted to believe that people could change, that monsters could become men again. But then he reached for her wrist. His grip was gentle at first. Almost tender. Then his fingers tightened, and she felt the ghost of every bruise he'd ever given her wake up under her skin. You're coming home with me, he said quietly. We're going to fix this. Together. No. The word came out stronger than she expected. Elena yanked her arm back, and for a moment she saw his face change. The mask slipped. The darkness underneath showed through. Then he smiled again, stood up, and straightened his jacket. Think about it, he said, moving toward the door. I'm staying at the Signal. Room 3208. You have until Sunday. He paused at the threshold, looking back at her with those cold, calculating eyes. Don't make me come back here, Elena. Next time I won't be so patient. Elena didn't move for 20 minutes. Didn't breathe properly for an hour. By the time dawn bled gray light through her window, she'd already made a plan. She would disappear. Again. The bruise bloomed purple-black across her ribs by Thursday morning. Elena stared at it in the bathroom mirror of the Crimson Hour, the upscale cocktail bar in Itaewon where she'd worked for the past 4 months. She didn't remember Dominic hitting her. But she remembered his grip on her wrist, the way he'd pulled her close before leaving, his breath hot against her ear as he whispered, "You're mine, Elena. You'll always be mine." Maybe she'd hit the corner of her nightstand when she'd jerked away. Maybe he'd squeezed harder than she'd realized. It didn't matter. The bruise from previous abuse was there, spreading like an ink stain under her skin. She pulled her concealer from her purse, the expensive kind that actually covered what you needed hidden, and started painting over the evidence. Foundation. Powder. A long-sleeved black blouse even though the weather was warm. Her manager, Ji-woo, had stopped asking questions 2 weeks ago. The first time she'd shown up with a split lip, she'd said she slipped getting out of the shower. The second time, fingerprints on her forearm, she'd blamed it on an aggressive drunk customer who'd grabbed her. After that, Jiwoo just looked at her with sad, knowing eyes and said nothing. Elena finished her makeup and walked back into the bar. It was 11 p.m. on a Thursday, which meant decent crowd but not overwhelming. Businessmen in expensive suits. Couples on dates. Expats looking for a taste of home. The Crimson Owl catered to people with money and secrets, which meant good tips and customers who didn't ask too many questions. She was wiping down the bar when she felt eyes on her. She looked up. He was sitting at the far end of the bar in his usual spot, the man in the charcoal suit who'd been coming in every Thursday night for the past month. Always alone. Always ordered the same thing, whiskey, neat, top shelf. Always left exactly at midnight. He never tried to make small talk. Never hit on her like the other customers. Just sat there, watching the room with the kind of quiet intensity that made her think he was either very dangerous or very lonely. Maybe both. Tonight, his dark eyes were fixed on her with an expression she couldn't read. Elena grabbed the bottle of Glenfiddich and walked over. The usual. Yes. His voice was deep, accented, Korean, but his English was flawless. He was probably late 30s, maybe 40. Handsome in that severe, carved from stone way. The kind of face that didn't smile much because it didn't need to. She poured his drink, and that's when his hand moved, fast, but not threatening, catching her wrist gently as she set the glass down. Elena froze. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. She followed his gaze to the edge of her sleeve, which had ridden up just enough to show the faint yellow-green remnants of older bruises. "I slipped," she said automatically, pulling her arm back. "In the bathroom. Tile floors, you know how it is." He didn't let go. His grip was careful, nothing like Dominic's. But there was something in his eyes, something sharp and searching that made her feel like he could see straight through her lies. "You slip very often," he observed. "This is the 4th week I've seen new bruises." "I'm clumsy." "No," he said simply. "You're not." He released her wrist and picked up his drink, dismissing the conversation as easily as he'd started it. But Elena felt the weight of his gaze follow her for the rest of the night. For the first time since she'd met him, something shifted in his expression. Not quite emotion. More like the shadow of something buried very deep. He finished his drink, left 300,000 won on the bar, 10 times what his bill, and walked out into the Seoul night. Elena stared at the money, then at the door, then at her reflection in the bottles behind the bar. She looked like a ghost. The 3rd Thursday, Dominic came to the bar. Elena saw him the moment he walked through the door at 10:45 p.m., 20 minutes before closing. Her stomach dropped so hard and fast she thought she might vomit right there behind the bar. Jiwoo had already left. The last customers had filtered out 10 minutes ago. It was just Elena, wiping down tables, counting down the minutes until she could lock the door and run home. Just Elena. And now Dominic. "There's my girl," he said, smiling that perfect smile that had once made her feel special and now made her feel like prey. "You've been avoiding my calls." "We're closed," Elena managed, backing toward the bar. "You need to leave." "Come on, baby. Don't be like that." He moved closer, hands in his pockets, casual and confident. "I told you. I came all this way for you. The least you can do is talk to me." "There's nothing to talk about. We're done. We've been done." His smile vanished. "Done," he repeated softly. "You don't get to decide when we're done, Elena. I decide that. Me." He lunged. Elena tried to run, but he was faster, catching her arm and slamming her against the bar hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Bottles rattled. Glass shattered somewhere. "You think you can just leave me?" Dominic hissed, his face inches from hers. "Disappear to Korea like I wouldn't find you? Like you're not mine?" His hand closed around her throat. Elena clawed at his fingers, gasping, vision starting to blur at the edges. She could hear her pulse in her ears, loud and desperate and fading. "This is how I die," she thought distantly. In a bar in Seoul. Alone. Then the pressure vanished. Dominic made a choked sound and flew backward, hitting a table hard enough to splinter wood. Elena collapsed to her knees, coughing, sucking in air that burned like fire. When her vision cleared, she saw him. The man in the charcoal suit. He stood between her and Dominic, perfectly still, perfectly calm. But there was something in his posture, in the way he held himself, that made him look more dangerous than any weapon. "Get up," he said to Dominic. His voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. Dominic scrambled to his feet, face twisted with rage and confusion. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's going to give you one chance to walk away. This is between me and my girlfriend." "She's not your girlfriend." The man in the suit took one step forward. Just one. Dominic took 3 steps back. "And if you ever touch her again, you won't walk anywhere. Do you understand?" Dominic's bravado cracked. Elena saw it, the moment he realized he'd made a terrible mistake. The moment he understood that this man wasn't someone you threatened. This man was someone you ran from. "You don't know who you're messing with," Dominic tried weakly. "No," the man said. "You don't." He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking rapid Korean that Elena couldn't follow. When he hung up, he looked at Dominic with eyes that held no mercy. "My men will be here in 3 minutes. You can leave now, or you can meet them. Choose quickly." Dominic ran. The door slammed behind him, and suddenly the bar was quiet. Elena was still on the floor, still trying to breathe, still trying to understand what had just happened. The man in the suit turned to her, and his expression softened. "Are you hurt?" he asked, crouching down to her level. I don't," her voice broke. "Who are you?" "My name is Kang Jae-sung," he said. "And you're safe now?" "I was outside. I've been outside every Thursday after I leave. Making sure you get home safely." His jaw tightened. "I should have come in sooner." Elena stared at him. "You've been following me." "Protecting you," he corrected. "There's a difference." Before she could respond, the door opened again. Elena flinched, but it wasn't Dominic. It was 4 men in dark suits, broad-shouldered, grim-faced, moving with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of training and violence. Jae-sung stood and spoke to them in Korean. One of them nodded and left immediately. The others took positions by the door and windows, like soldiers securing a perimeter. "What's happening?" Elena whispered. Jae-sung offered her his hand. "I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that?" She nodded, letting him pull her to her feet. "That man, the one who hurt you. Is he staying in Seoul?" "Yes. The Signal Hotel. Room 3208. Something flickered across Jae-sung's face. Something cold and final. "Does he have friends? People who work with him?" Elena thought about Dominic's business partners. The men who'd helped him track her down before. The ones who'd laughed when she'd shown up at the office with a black eye and asked for help. 6 men, she said quietly. "They're here with him. Some kind of business deal." Jae-sung nodded slowly, then spoke into his phone again, a longer conversation, his tone sharp and commanding. When he finished, he looked at Elena with an expression that was almost gentle. "I need you to trust me," he said. "Can you do that? I don't even know you." "I know. But right now, I'm all that stands between you and a man who will kill you if given another chance." Elena looked into his eyes. She saw steel there. Danger. Power. But she also saw something else. Something that reminded her of the way he'd asked Asterisk who did this to you Asterisk every week, like he actually cared about the answer. "Yes," she whispered. "Good. My driver is outside. He's going to take you somewhere safe. You'll stay there tonight, no arguments. Tomorrow, we'll talk." "What are you going to do?" Jae-sung's expression went flat. Empty. The face of a man who'd made terrible decisions before and would make them again without hesitation. "I'm going to make sure he never touches you again," he said simply. "I'm going to make sure none of them do." Elena didn't sleep that night. Jae-sung's somewhere safe turned out to be a penthouse apartment in Gangnam, all glass and steel and luxury that made her studio look like a closet. There was security at the entrance. Cameras everywhere. Men in suits who nodded respectfully when she walked past. A woman named Minute Ji, efficient, kind, and asking no questions, had shown her to a bedroom bigger than her entire apartment, given her clean clothes, and told her to rest. But rest was impossible. Elena sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching Seoul's lights flicker in the darkness, and wondered what Jae-sung was doing. What he'd meant by asterisk make sure star. She thought about Dominic. About his face when Jae-sung had stepped between them. About the fear in his eyes when he'd run. Dominic was a coward. He'd always been a coward. But he was a coward with connections, money, and a vindictive streak that had followed her everywhere. What if he comes back with more men? What if he hurt Jae-sung? What if? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she thought about Jae-sung, about his promise, and she picked up. Hello. Elena. His voice was calm. Steady. Like he was calling about dinner plans, not whatever he'd been doing for the past 6 hours. I need you to answer one more question. Okay. Did Dominic ever mention why he came to Seoul? The real reason. Elena frowned, thinking back to that night in her apartment. He said something about a business deal. His in pharmaceuticals. Import-export, I think. Import-export, Jae-sung repeated quietly. There was a long pause. Elena, when you were with him, did you ever see him with unusual amounts of cash? Large packages? Meetings with people who made you uncomfortable? Her blood went cold. Yes, she whispered. Why? Because the men he brought with him aren't businessmen. They are distributors. And the business deal he came here for was moving product through my territory without permission. Your territory? I'll explain everything tomorrow. Right now, I need you to stay where you are. Don't open the door for anyone except Minute G. Don't leave. Don't call anyone. Can you do that? Jae-sung, what did you do? Another pause. Longer this time. What I had to, he said finally. Get some sleep, Elena. By morning, you'll be free. He hung up. Elena sat there, phone in her shaking hand, and watched the sun start to rise over Seoul. Jae-sung arrived at 7 a.m. He looked exactly the same, charcoal suit, perfect hair, calm expression, except for his knuckles, which were bruised and split. Elena was waiting in the living room, hadn't moved from the couch in hours. Is he gone? She asked before he could say anything. Yes. Jae-sung poured himself a drink, whiskey, neat, even though it was barely dawn. The others? Gone. All 6 of them. Dominic and his 5 associates are on a cargo ship heading back to the United States as we speak. They won't be coming back. You're sure? He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw exhaustion in his eyes. The kind that came from making choices you couldn't take back. I'm sure, he said quietly. I made it very clear what would happen if they ever set foot in Korea again. Elena should have felt relief. Victory. Something. Instead, she felt numb. Why? She asked. Why did you do all this? You don't even know me. Jae-sung set down his glass and moved to sit across from her, close, but not too close. Respectful of space in a way that Dominic never had been. I had a sister, he said quietly. Her name was Ji-woo. She was beautiful, brilliant, full of life. She met a man who seemed perfect. Charming. Successful. By the time I realized what he was doing to her, it was too late. His hands clenched into fists. I found her in her apartment. She'd taken pills. Left a note that said she was sorry. Sorry for being weak. Sorry for being a burden. His voice cracked, just slightly. Elena felt tears slide down her face. When I saw your bruises that first night, Jae-sung continued, I saw my sister. And I made a promise to myself that I would never ignore those signs again. That I would never let another woman suffer because I was too late. He looked at her with eyes that held oceans of grief. So when you ask why I did this, it's because I couldn't save Ji-woo. But I could save you. And if that makes me a monster, then so be it. You're not a monster, Elena whispered. Yes, I am. He stood, straightening his suit. I'm the head of one of the largest organized crime families in Seoul. I've done terrible things. Hurt people. Broken laws. I'm not a good man, Elena. But you're a good man to me. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe. Or hope. It was hard to tell. I've arranged for a new apartment. Your name only. Security. A bank account with enough money to last you a year while you figure out what you want to do. You don't owe me anything. You don't have to see me again if you don't want to. He handed her an envelope. But if you do want to see me, if you want to understand who I really am, there's an address inside. Come tomorrow night. Or don't. The choice is yours. He walked toward the door. Jae-sung. He stopped, looked back. Thank you, Elena said. For saving me. For asking. For caring. His expression softened. Thank you for answering, he said. Then he was gone. Elena opened the envelope. Inside was a key, an address in Itaewon, and a handwritten note. Asterisk, some monsters protect instead of prey. Some darkness fights other darkness so the light can survive. I won't apologize for what I am. But I will promise you this, as long as I'm breathing, no one will hurt you again. Asterisk. Asterisk tomorrow. 8 p.m. Only if you want answers. Asterisk. Asterisk, JK asterisk. She held the note for a long time, reading it over and over, trying to understand the man who'd written it. A mafia boss who saved women from monsters while being one himself. A killer with bruised knuckles. Elena looked out at Seoul's morning skyline and made a decision. She would go tomorrow night. She would get her answers. And maybe, just maybe, she would find something else too. Something that felt like safety. Like protection. Like the kind of love that didn't hurt but instead burned away everything that tried to. The sun climbed higher. By the time it set again, 10 men would be halfway across the Pacific, running from shadows. And Elena Monroe would be walking toward one. But in the cargo hold of a ship called Morning Star, in a locked container surrounded by crates of machinery, Dominic pressed his bleeding face against the cold metal and whispered into a satellite phone. She doesn't know yet, does she? About what she did. About why I really came. A voice on the other end laughed. Let Kang Jae-sung have his moment. When she finds out the truth about that night in New York, about whose blood was really on her hands, she'll realize she's not his victim to save. She's our weapon to use. Thank you for listening to this story. Please like, subscribe and tell me where you are watching from in the comments.